Derrick Rose, number 10. At one point in time, he would have been number 1. He might, maybe, I mean, you could even make the argument now that he's still number 1. It's just been so long. Who else is not on this list is Boban. Boban would be on this list, but why wouldn't he be? He is not an NBA player currently. I could put him on the list and say, hey, well, he was most recently in the last season an NBA player, so he counts. But he doesn't. I'm going with guys that are currently on an NBA contract. Derrick Rose is on. He has one more year left on his contract with the Memphis Grizzlies, which is actually pretty cool. It took me a while to realize, I'm like, oh, dude, he went to University of Memphis. So there's that connection, too. I don't know how much he's playing there. You want to know why he's still playing? Also, Derrick Rose, I believe, is younger than Steph Curry, which is kind of an interesting thought. A little bit sad, too. But his Adidas contract was a 14-year contract that I believe he signed in 2012, so the year after he won MVP. And it requires him to be on an NBA roster for the contract to be upheld. And it's a wild contract. It's like, I think it's $191 million that's still being paid out to him. And his brother has like a salary with Adidas through this contract, which I think is so funny. It's like one of the most convoluted shoe contracts of all time. So that isn't what it was. Kobe had just left Adidas, I believe. I think that was it. Kobe had just left Adidas, so they needed a new face of Adidas, and of course LeBron was Nike, and he become a villain because he went to Miami. So they were like, okay, we're just gonna D-Rose. He's on the come up. He just won MVP. Give him whatever he wants. And he's gonna be the face of the league. He's gonna give LeBron a run for his money. Let's do a 14-year deal. Give him whatever he wants, which is pretty great. So that's why, if you're curious, like, why is D-Rose always on a team? It's probably because he likes basketball, but also because he needs it to make the rest of his money. But why is Derrick Rose so popular? Well, I think him being a hometown boy in Chicago, obviously, like, guys at the beginning of their career, they're not jaded, they want to win, they play hard. Kind of Derrick Rose's problem. Sometimes that's just that explosive style of basketball. We see it with Ja, we see it with Zion. You're going to be injury prone. If you're a high flyer, it's just most likely going to happen. But he gave it up for the Bulls. That was the thing. He gave it up. Like, he wanted the Bulls to be good, and he was committed to it. So it ended up, his knee. He had I think he had a meniscus and an ACL injury, and that was obviously in the 2012 playoffs right before, and then so on. So, and I was doing a little bit of research for this, and they talked about the fact that Derrick Rose never had the opportunity to be a bust, if you think about it. He was the number 1 pick, and he was really good, and he was the youngest MVP ever. But his injuries never actually made it so that people could be like, actually, he's washed, he sucks ass, he's not good anymore, he's bad. His injuries made it so that people saw the talent and see it being squandered. Squandered isn't the right word. See it being taken away from him with all his passion, his love of the game, but the inability to play like he used to because of his knees. So people have this fondness for like what could have been. He could have had this like Hall of Fame career. He never had the opportunity for someone to like, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, to be a disappointment because his career, his prime wasn't that long. So you kind of live in, it's sort of like when like a Basquiat or a Kurt Cobain, it's Amy Winehouse, where is their body of work very large? No. But you romanticize the potential. It's just a theory. Like, people talk about Brandon Roy. Who else was on that list? Grant Hill, Penny Hardaway. All these guys where you kind of wonder what could have been. And you see them, it's a little bit, it's fond. It's like, oh, wow, like, he could have been great. You don't have this, like, resentment, like, because as, like, loser basketball fans, we're all kind of like, yeah, that guy sucks ass. He's washed. He's terrible. We like doing that, right? You can't really do it with those guys. So I think that's why he's so, You ever watch the video of him being called when he's in LA? He's at his home in LA. This is Derrick Rose. He's in his home, and they're shooting like a doc on him. Someone's getting footage or something, and his agent calls and says, "Hey, you've been traded to the Knicks," and he starts crying. It's on one of my it's on YouTube, but I also put the clip in one of my videos on my other channel. You should check out the real video. It's pretty heartbreaking. So, and then of course, remember, I think it was a 40-point game when he was at Minnesota. He's like, "I worked my ass off, man." He's like crying. Grown men crying is always great. Like a well-earned public cry. I know I said don't cry in public, but a well-earned public cry. People are gonna fall in love with you. Should Derrick Rose have been number 1, but somehow I made him 10? No, because he's a little less relevant now. People have kind of moved on from that peak Derrick Rose nostalgia, right? So, and I have more notes here, but I feel like we've covered it. He was going up against Miami back when, like I said, LeBron was the villain, so they were the guys in the East that could potentially beat Miami's big three, especially because Derrick Rose was, not a rookie, but what a sophomore. Let's move on. Mike Conley. Mike Conley has won the Sportsmanship Award 4 times. That's crazy to me. What does it even, and I guess it just means you're a good, I think you get chosen by the guys that aren't on your team. Like, damn, that guy he was really cool to us and wasn't a dick, Mike Conley. Or maybe there's guys that were like, yeah, I used to play with him on this team and he's still a cool guy, so I'm always going to vote for him. I don't know. But I think we do a little bit. I think one thing, the longevity, you respect the longevity in his career and his ability to stay in the league. I listened to Thad Young talk about this, but he was talking about, look at Thad Young. He's one of the top earners in the NBA. He's just managed to stay in the league. And I think that says something about you. I mean, we talk about Greg Oden. He obviously had injuries and stuff, but his ability, Greg Oden, and they played together at Ohio State, Greg Oden and Mike Conley, and they were drafted the same year. So they were sort of tied together. And we haven't seen Greg Oden play basketball in years, but Mike Conley is still out there. This was the Kevin Durant draft as well. So my point to that, of the longevity aspect of it, is if you can learn to serve a role, this was what Thad Young was saying, if you can just get signed on a team and then say, what do I do? Where do I fit in here? How can I be of service to this team, even if it's not what I want to do? You can stay in the league and make a lot of money. I think Thad Young has the current, of current players, he's made the 11th most amount of money, which he's a player people don't even know. I don't even know if I think he's still in the Raptors, maybe. I don't know. Proves my point, though. So yeah, for a long time he was always snubbed. He was the guy who was the best player to never make an all-star team. It was always Mike Conley. And then he was the injury reserve one year. So people asked him, do you like being the guy that should have been an all-star at some point? Like the best player to never make an all-star team? And he's like, no, I've always wanted to be on the all-star team. And I get to be in it, and I'm going to play, and it's going to be awesome. I liked that. I like that. Just it's a cool thing to do, and I'd like to be involved, Okay, because Chris Finch claimed, so Conley ended up going to Minnesota, I believe in that weird Westbrook trade that sent Vanderbilt and Malik Beasley to the Lakers. I think it sent Pat Bev to the Jazz and Russ to the Jazz. Anyway, Conley was a member of the Jazz, and he went to the Timberwolves. Chris Finch, head coach of the Timberwolves, says there was a disconnect between him and the players. There was just something missing. They weren't quite getting along. They weren't quite connecting. There was just emotionally and then mentally, there was just a missing chunk. And once Mike got there, apparently he was able to understand Mike in a way, and Mike was able to understand the other guys on the team, that sort of like the bridge, almost like the translator between the coaching staff and the players. So everyone on that team sort of talks about how important Mike Conley was to making that team good, which is pretty interesting, because they're great. They're a great team, and there's always that aspect of there are a bunch of great parts. You get Karl-Anthony Towns, awesome player. Ant, awesome. Rudy Gobert, awesome. But Mike Conley will never get due. He will never get his due for what he did for the team. And you have to assume that he is owed a lot more, right? Because, all right, I'm done. You get the point. You know what I'm saying. I'm getting so tangential on Mike Conley. I have other notes? I just don't care. Jrue Holiday at 8. These are the guys that win, like, okay, so Jrue Holiday has won the sportsmanship award 1 year, but he's won the Twyman-Stokes. Read about the Twyman-Stokes award. It's a real sad story. Just don't read it. It's actually a huge bummer. It's a crazy sad story. Two guys that were, they're two different guys. They were really good friends. One died. And then 3-time teammate of the year. He hogs this award, dude. He's the ultimate teammate. The Bucks still didn't want him. These are, okay, if you type in underrated player in the NBA, the most articles, the most videos you're going to find are about Jrue Holiday. And a while back, he was made an all-star. So Jrue Holiday has been an all-star, I believe, twice in his career. And the all-star seasons were 10 years apart. Isn't that crazy? To have a season where you're an all-star and then you get another one 10 years later in your professional sports career? It's crazy. But after that year, people were talking about, is Jrue Holiday actually an overrated player? You know the conversations we have because we're bored and we want to talk sports. Maybe nothing's going on that day. And I have this theory that he can never be overrated because he can never be celebrated as a star player. He won't, based on his offensive ability, and basically what he looks like out on the court, on his offensive game and the way it looks. You're never going to say he's a superstar when he is, and he provides that kind of value, but you don't see it in the box score. Maybe you don't even see it out on the court, but the leadership he provides, the vibes are so important. So you could never call him a superstar, even though I'm calling him a superstar. So he'll always be underrated. Does that make sense? He's has to be underrated because no one's ever going to say he's as great as he is. So, his wife had a brain tumor as well. He had to take some time off. He's a real family man. When most guys, there's a few family men, I can't say family guy, in this list. Think about when you're an NBA player, we are fortunate. It's all men that watch this show. We are fortunate because we are not in the position where we have women that available to us. We are not in that position. We're never going to have the ability to fuck up our lives by getting involved with people who want us for our money, right? We don't have to make that choice. That's not an option for us. But for these guys, it's I got all this money. How many guys have we seen just screw up their lives because they're just trying to get laid, or you know what I mean, getting involved with the wrong people. Jrue Holiday met his wife in college. She played for the soccer team. She's part of the Lauren Holiday. She plays for the women's national team, or did. I think she retired, but they met. They had a cute story, and I'm damn. He's a handsome guy. He probably, could have destroyed his life with sex, but he didn't. And I respect that because I would, be bad news, man. What else we got? And I've talked about this all the time, but I love that he won with Boston and Milwaukee traded him. How good does that feel? Jrue Holiday's probably my favorite player. Used to be LeBron, then it was Jokic for a little bit, but the steady Eddie is Jrue Holiday. So it's good to see him kind of get kicked to the curb and then win a championship. I love it. I'm in love with it. Caruso is an undrafted player. That's the big thing for me. Came up through the G League. He actually was coached by Mark Daigneault. Did you know that? Because he was on the OKC Blue. Mark Daigneault coached the OKC Blue. So there's that connection there. Came up through South Bay Lakers. So I remember I was at a Laker game. This was the year that they didn't make the playoffs. I actually was at JaVale McGee's career high game. Kind of stupid to even bring up. But The only Laker game I've ever been to. But I remember Caruso was playing a lot. They didn't make the playoffs this year, but he was good. This was the strange thing. Everyone had given up on the season, but he was getting a lot of minutes. And he was good, and people kind of made fun of him just because he wasn't shaving it bald. He had full hairline, but just very thin. And people would make fun of him because people like to make fun of people's physical appearance, or so they'd at least bring it up as a joke. But then people were like, but he's good. He's actually really good, and he has a lot of talent. Then the following season, he just was a member of the Lakers and did really well. He was incredible. And they won the championship that year. Because LeBron, the first year is what I'm talking about when I saw the game, and they didn't make the playoffs. That was 2019. And then the following season, dude, Caruso was getting minutes, and he won. I think he started some playoff games that year in the bubble. So people love that man. And people say he looks like an everyman. I remember on JJ's podcast, JJ Redick, I know JJ for real. JJ was Caruso brought up, he says, yeah, everyone says I look like the everyman, but he's like, I am 6'5". I was like, yes, that it is, because you look at him on the court and you're like, oh, he looks like me. It's like, I am 6'5" and I am 200 pounds. I am a professional athlete. And I was like, yeah, talk your shit, dude. You are a professional athlete. You are good at your job, and you don't look like any of us. You're massive. But it just doesn't look like that on the court. So I think that's why people love him. Apparently his teammates called him the GOAT. Bald Mamba is a sick nickname. All defensive player too. I think, people that try hard on defense and care about the game. Defense is sort of a reflection of how much you care, but not as much as hustle stats. And Caruso is always all over the hustle stats. A lot of deflections, a lot of box outs, and a lot of loose balls recovered. He's always on the top 10. So maybe these are all just reasons that I like Alex Caruso, but they're good reasons for you to like him too. So, Ant is he's funny. That's the thing. He actually is authentically himself. Remember when he's in Target, he's like, yeah, it's my son, talking about Karl Anthony Towns, and Karl Anthony was like, I'm not your son. That was great. He's like, yeah, I got 2 7-foot talls. Where's Rudy at? I don't know why I thought that was so funny. And then when he's talking about, yeah, I played baseball, I batted 4th or 5th. You know what that is? Cleanup. I didn't know what cleanup batters were. I didn't know any of this. And he says, clean up a mile 3. It was effortlessly funny. It was just him being himself. And I really enjoyed it. Before I made the slide, or while I was making the slide, I was watching funny Anthony Edwards clips. A guy from Ireland starts talking to him, and he says, where's your accent from? And the guy asks this insanely long question. You know how the reporters, the post-game interviews, they ask these questions that are just, they're questions that they have something to say. They have their thing to say, and then they throw a question mark at the end of their paragraph, and you're like, it's not a question. Yeah, I know you upward inflected at the end as if it were a question. But anyway, Anthony Edwards is like, where are you from, man? And he's like, oh, I'm from Ireland. And then he's like, oh, that's a cool accent, man. He's like, actually, I was so focused on your accent, I don't even know what you said. So the guy repeats him. Yeah, real sweet guy. The crotch chop is the funniest thing. I love it when Embiid does it. I love it when Anthony Edwards, and the refs don't care. No one's doing any sort of taunting or anything. They just let everyone do the crotch chop, but it means suck my dick. I'll probably have to edit that out. What are we at? 19 minutes. I don't know. I might get flagged, but it's such a lewd gesture for the refs to be like, it's almost like the refs are just like, I'm just going to pretend they don't know what it means. Even though everyone knows what it means. If you've never seen it before, you can put it together what it means. But he's going to be the face of the league because he's American. Because think about it. It's either Tatum or him. We need an American face of the league. That's who we are. Americans are very proud, and we don't want to celebrate foreign people to a degree. Subconsciously. Not consciously. Subconsciously. We want people like us. We do. It's in our DNA. And we're sorry about it, but what are you going to do? And he's skilled. So, and he always praises his teammates at the end of the game. because he always has the. They're always giving the mic to him at the end of the game without fail. Somebody must have gotten his ear. I think he has a good mentor telling him, "Hey, praise your teammates. Make sure you're always doing this. Keep your head on straight. Don't get too inflated of an ego." You know, I mean, he definitely has confidence, but I think the praise for teammates and the not being critical of other people says a lot about you. Because I don't mind if you're like, "Hey, I'm very confident in my abilities," but you're not tearing down other people. Because when you start tearing down other people, I'm like, you don't have to do that. You can be confident in yourself without having to tear someone down. I think Anthony Edwards does that. He looks like Michael Jordan a lot too. He smiles like Michael Jordan, and that's gonna mean something. It means something to me. Maxey, dude. Maxey loves his grandma. He was talking about his grandma. He was saying he smiles so much because his grandma, I think he was like frowning one time. He had to go to practice, or he just like didn't want to go, and his grandma like chewed him out and said, "Hey, you get, like, every day is a blessing. Like, look what you have. Look at everything you've been given. Why would you be angry? Why would you be smiling? Because you have everything. If you're not happy with what you have now, you're never going to be happy." And I think about that a lot, right? Doesn't matter your circumstance. You can choose to look at it positively or negatively. Everyone, don't compare yourself to other people. Just see what you have, because you do have something good in your life. And he saved, like, Philly is a really tough place to play. So I hear. Not that I would know, you know what I mean? I've never been to Philly. I don't read Philly newspapers, but by all accounts, tough place to play. People are very critical in Philadelphia. You can hear my AC kick on. And he said, like, Harden left. Harden bailed. He didn't want to be there anymore. And you had Tyrese Maxey come in and step up for Philly. And that context to him getting the most improved player award is huge in terms of his, and he did really well in the playoffs. Like that game where they came back against the Knicks was crazy. So Embiid was such a disappointment. Now you got Maxey in there. People love this guy, and he just doesn't stop smiling. Every time he walks in the gym, it's like a ray of sunshine. You know who said that? Doc Rivers. Even though it didn't really, I think Doc and him, people now will look back on it and like, dude, you should have played him. You should have played DeAnthony Melton so much. You should have played Tyrese Maxey. But Maxey never had a bad attitude about it. He was always very positive. So remember that. I remember hear him say that on JJ's podcast too. I'm going to miss that podcast. Old Man the 3. It was good. I really enjoyed it. I like JJ Redick a lot. Dude's always smiling. Tobias Harris said that. So, yeah. I enjoy watching this guy. As much as I don't like rooting for Philly, and I'm not looking forward to, there's a lot, I'm just not crazy about that team. I'm going to be rooting for Tyrese Maxey. I always do. Dude, they have their announcers on their local sports broadcast are the biggest homers of all time. I will say I think they are the best local sports broadcast of all League Pass, of all the RSNs. They are the best. They are total homers, and they are very annoying, but they do a great job. So their annoyingness is excellent. That's what I have to say. So Nikola Jokic, even though I'm a little bit, after the playoffs, I just sort of lost my Jokic boner, but what are you going to do? He's one of the most humble superstars. He's not, I got to get out of Denver. I got to he was never complaining about them because they lost a lot, and Jamal Murray was out a lot. Always had a good attitude. Signed that extension. Of course, it's a Supermax. Of course, you're going to sign it. But, yeah, he just doesn't complain. DJ says that he doesn't talk much. DeAndre Jordan says he doesn't talk much. But when he talks, everyone shuts up. Reggie Jackson, excuse me, said he lost his love of basketball. He says he's lost his love of basketball twice. Paul George convinced him to sign with the Clippers and say, hey, man, we got a spot for you. You got to join our team. I like Reggie Jackson a lot. But then he was kind of, disenchanted with it. But he came back to the Nuggets and said, like, everyone, the attitude and the energy there just made him remember what was so great about this game. And then I cried. He's a family man. He married a woman down the village, like the village next to him in Serbia. He said that on Michael Porter Jr.'s podcast. He's like, oh yeah, she's actually from down the, the road, and so Our family knew each other. Again, not a guy that's hitting the clubs. And I think being a guy that loves his family and focuses on that, it's going to make you a better basketball player, because you lose a lot of the drama and lack of focus when you're out there being a tomcat. Have you heard that before? Tomcat? Do you know what that means? You're probably too young. You are too young. There's no way you know what I'm talking about. Look it up. But he's also emotional. I did on my other channel, I talked about him a bit, and he cares. People were like, oh, I don't like him because he doesn't care. Dude, he cares. He loses control of his emotions. Like, you kind of see the humanity of him, because he's not always a good guy. He does bad things. I mean, I talk about this all the time. I talked about it last week, but shoving Markieff Morris from behind was that was not cool. Like, he really could have hurt him, especially neck injuries. That was really disappointing. Nevertheless, to prove my point, guy gets techs, guy gets flagrant fouls, he gets thrown out of games. He cares. For better or for worse, he's very emotional out on the court. So when people say this thing oh, he doesn't even care, he just wants to ride horses, I'm like, yeah, it's not true at all. You don't watch basketball, if that's what you think. He just doesn't want to do the BS, the parade, we won, we did everything we came here to do. I'm not going to indulge this vanity of, everyone staring at me on a bus. I can take or leave it. But he had a good time. Giannis, okay, so did you know, so he came from incredibly humble beginnings. I haven't watched the Disney documentaries on it. I don't watch documentaries like that, because I feel like they're a little bit too one-dimensional. But he shared shoes with his bros. When they'd have different practices, they'd oh, I need the shoes now. They'd give each other the shoes. Dude, they were broke as hell. And he still kind of has that poverty mindset. He says that he's I work so hard because I'm afraid of being broke again and not being able to provide for my family, which is so interesting. You can be almost a billionaire and then still have money anxiety. Pretty interesting, right? Doesn't go away, does it? Larry David said that. He's yeah, I used to stress out about money all the time. Then I got rich and I just kept stressing about money. Human condition. Dude, he got a ride. When he was a rookie, this is the story. There's a video, again, local Milwaukee news. It's this lady talking about how she gave him a ride to the stadium. He went to Western Union to wire money to his family back in Greece. And then he needed to get to the stadium for the game, and he was going to jog. And a lady saw him and was like, hey, I'll give you a ride. And he got in the back of her Honda Fit and gave him a ride to the center. So she says. There were parts of her story that didn't quite add up, but nevertheless, it's a good story. And she told it on the news, so I don't feel bad repeating it. But yeah, just you love to hear about a guy that worked so hard to become a billionaire. I do. Dude, look how jacked his arm. He's pulling his sleeve off to give it to a fan. Look how his tricep is activated. It's almost like he doesn't even have he doesn't have any body fat, but he also has thin skin, there's just nothing between us looking at his raw muscle, man. And that's another thing too. He works on a new part of his, Kobe did that. Work on a new part of your game every off season. He does that as well. He used to shoot threes every once in a while. He doesn't do that ever anymore, but one off season he just got muscular because he was skinny for so long, and then he just whatever frame he has, he just started working out and he became a specimen, man. So I think that's one of the things he worked on in one of the off seasons, is he just said, hey, I'm going to look like Jay Cutler, not the football player, the bodybuilder. There's two Jay Cutlers. He also looks out for his family. You can call it nepotism, which it is. It's nepotism, but I respect the nepotism. He's yeah, I want Thanasis on the team. Well, hey, that's the deal. You want me to stay in Milwaukee? You want me to not make a stink and ask for a trade and do all that stuff? You don't want me to be difficult? Well, then look out for my family. Have Thanasis on the team. You may not like it. If you didn't like that, if you're it kind of sucks. I don't like the nepotism. I understand that too. Also, Alex, Antetokounmpo was on the Herd for a while. Now, I think Alex and Kostas play over in Europe now. But he, I think Milwaukee wanted him to get whatever he wanted for his family because it was very important to him. And that's why I like him. And you can be conflicted about that. I respect it. Played through a hyperextended knee. Any guy that plays through injury, it's not wise. It's kind of foolish, but man, do us basketball fans get hard for it. I'm going to read you a quote because you can't read it on the slide. But he said, I like sometimes looking at accomplishments from the past. It's like understood. It's in brackets. They stop you from going out there and chasing and being desperate. Why I'm here is because I'm desperate. I'm not as talented as Steph. I'm not as talented as KD. I'm effing desperate. I don't want to, I'm obsessed. So the humility, and then especially remember when he was like, someone's like, are you upset that you're not in the MVP race this year? And he said, I feel like the worst player in the league. And I love that attitude. I just, because Embiid would have been like, nobody's talking about me. I'm doing my best, but nobody's talking. But Giannis is like, no, it'd be embarrassing if someone were to say that. I'm not criticizing Embiid, but I prefer the Giannis attitude. So I also like that. Remember when he's like, the reporters, they say, I don't know. I mean, obviously they're questions. They're trying to get a story, so I don't want to criticize them. But sometimes, like, at the end of games, it feels a lot like they're just trying to shove the knife in. Because the reporter was like, do you consider this season a failure? It's like, of course. Like, yes. But then, he says, like, it's all part of the process. We're always trying to get better. And I'm like, yes, that's the right answer. And then people talked about him saying that, like, no, it was a failure. I'm like, yes, of course it's a failure. The question is a failure of a question. Like, they lost. They were trying to win the championship. They did not meet the objective. So, yeah, that upset me that people were like, you lost, Giannis. Like, he knows. All right, now I'm getting worked up. Steven Adams, dude. Did you know he's from, the place where he's from in New Zealand is, he says it just smells like farts all the time because there's like a sulfur hot spring there. And he's an interesting story. He comes from a family of 18. His dad was in his 60s when he had him. And died pretty soon after. But he had a family of 18, and he got involved with a gang. And I've heard him talk about it a little, but I guess one of his older brothers was like, we're just going to try to get you into sports, like some of his other family was. I think he has a sister that's an Olympian. And what an awesome guy. I mean, there's like compilations of him picking up guys on the other team that like fall down and making sure they're okay, which is something you rarely see in the NBA. And I think part of it is just because when a guy falls down, it's part of the same team likes to pick him up. It's part of their process and how they, like a high five after a free throw, make or miss. But he always helps guys up, make sure they're okay. He also is the only player that can successfully break up a fight. He is the only one. He's the only one that tries to break up a fight and actually can do it. He's so strong that he can there's like a video of him like grabbing Willie Cauley-Stein and just like holding him. And Willie's like trying to get violent. It's amazing. He is the strongest. There's no way if there was an arm wrestling match or anything or a wrestling match, like Steven Adams is going to win. But he seems like a very peaceful guy. He's very funny. Someone asked him, again, the reporters, they ask these like questions like, oh, like, what's your rebounding process? And he's like, oh, I just kind of stand there, mate. I just kind of stand there. And then someone's like, oh yeah. He's like, oh yeah, you got a lot of rebounds tonight. Like, you're like leading the league in rebounds. He's like, yeah, I'm a big bastard. He's like, yeah, I'm a big bastard. I just, you're not gonna have the little guys getting it. I was like, dude, that's just because the questions are always. He's not like being a dick about it. He's just like answering the question earnestly, which is gonna make you sound like you're being like poking fun. But it's just because the question was like a question that had an answer. Okay, do you remember that? There's a play that comes around a lot. I saw this TikTok that someone had cut up, but they cut up like guys like landing on their backs, you know, going to the rack and landing awkwardly on their backs, and then nobody helping them up. But then they showed the where Mason Plumlee comes in. Steven Adams has the ball. He's going up for a layup, but Mason Plumlee kind of comes in reckless, goes over the top of Steven Adams, and Steven Adams could just come up for a layup and get an and one because he's already committed the foul, but he grabs him and helps him like not hit his head. And yeah, you can't not root for a guy like that. Got kicked in the nuts, didn't retaliate. Actually, there's another, like in those compilations, there's Draymond Green like falling down. He's like grabbing him as he fell down. Real turn the other cheek, Christ-like energy. So I'm a huge fan, man. I really love this guy. Steph Curry, I think, is number one. I think he's the most well-liked player. There are Steph haters, but I think those people have something wrong with them, you know? Because there's people I hate on or I have that trigger me, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're actually really nice people, but for some reason they annoy me. So the only people that would not like Steph are like that. Have you seen the video of him at the Paramore concert at the Chase Center? He's not singing. They give him the mic to sing Misery Business, and he doesn't sing. Because she's like, Haley's like, all right, this is Steph's show now. And then they do the hook, and he's mouthing the words, but he doesn't sing. Which I was like, oh, man. I wish he would have done that. I also like the commercials I like this, like, him in the commercials, they make him a doofus, and he goes with it. He's, like, not afraid to laugh at himself. Love it. Perfect. Where he's being a mime. A lot of guys wouldn't do that. Or in the Subway commercials where he just or CarMax commercials where he just plays like an idiot. Like, I think it takes a lot of humility to do that. So, he sold the most jerseys this year. Did you know that? Sold more jerseys than LeBron. And when he won his MVPs, I think people like him because he looked like a kid. I think like Allen Iverson. We loved Allen Iverson when I was a kid because he was short. He was short and he looked cool. We loved him. But, you know, kids saw him. He was very boyish looking. So I think kids saw him. They were like, I could do that. Like, he kind of looks like me compared to all the other guys out there. So I think people really kind of fell in love with him. And he's, again, another family man. And Steph is like a unique case because he is a superstar, but I don't know if he necessarily sees himself that way. Because remember in 2022, he came off the bench because he was on a minutes restriction. He came off the bench against Denver. This was the year they won the championship. And he had no problem with it. And even like Kerr was sort of like surprised that he would be so humble to come off the bench. Because usually if you're on a minutes restriction, if you're on a minutes restriction, you're still going to be like, I want to start. But it didn't necessarily work, and he had no problems about it. And apparently that kind of set the tone thereafter for if anyone was going to come off the bench, they were fine doing it because their best player was willing to come off the bench. So, yeah, it was pretty cool. And then also the humility to have Kevin Durant come in and be the number one guy on your team that you'd won a championship with and that you'd won the MVP before and say, I want to have the best basketball team possible. And if this guy wants to come in and play with me and my team, that's going to make us better. I wouldn't have done that if I were Steph Curry. If I could even imagine being him or a professional athlete at all, I would have had a problem with it. So that's how I feel. So, yeah, I think Steph Curry's right? Who am I missing? Am I missing someone? Remember, you can't do Boban, can't do Taco Fall because they're not in the league at this point. Who did I miss? I think it's a good list, but you might disagree with Curry being number one. Then could be D Rose. Anyway, thanks for being here. Be good to your mothers. Eat a corn dog.